the first things we need to know is that the storms of life are going to test your faith. Amen? Faith is going to be tested when those storms pop up. Secondly, storms can pop up very suddenly. As it says in verse 37, it says, a furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. In some translations of this, it says, suddenly it popped up. So it was kind of chill. It was calm. We know that's in the evening because Mark wrote that in there, that it's evening. The day's done, and they're in there, and all of a sudden this thing pops up. And it's not just a squall. It's a furious squall. Just out of nowhere. And man, if that's not true about storms in our lives, right? Sometimes you can see them coming from the distance, especially if you're a husband and you can see your wife's upset because of something you forgot to do. You're like, there is a storm coming my way. I know it's going to happen, all right? But sometimes it just pops up from nowhere, unforeseen. Right? All of a sudden you get a phone call. You have an interaction. Something happens. And just the bottom drops out and you find yourself in the middle of the storm. You get news from a doctor you weren't expecting to get. You thought for sure everything was going this way, and then all of a sudden in an instant, everything changes. And now you're in the storm. And that's just a part of life. It's not fun. Do the best you can to avoid storms, for sure. But they're just going to happen. And the thing is how we act in them and how we let them mess with us and how we choose to connect with God in them help us to handle storms better. And we grow. As James wrote, it builds your faith. It's this weird thing of actually you want stronger faith, you just got to go through it. It's kind of like, if you want, I want to get a little bit stronger, okay, you can go and buy the weights or you can get the gym membership, but guess what you actually have to do? You have to do it. You can take all the classes and learn how to do it and how to do perfect form, but it doesn't work until but it hurts. And you know how that is, especially the first 2 weeks of working out is just, it's like, why would anyone do this? You're convinced your body is telling you, stop. I am hurting. I am in pain. Are you trying to kill me? But the thing is, we know that in order to grow, to get stronger, to get past that spot, we have to go through that little storm. It's the same as life, man. When things pop up, I get it. First thing is probably going to freak out, but to keep in mind, this is what storms do. They pop up suddenly, but God's still in here somewhere. And somehow I'm supposed to consider it joy. Yay! Storms can cause fear and doubt. It says in verse 38, Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Now their fear was understandable. Now, keep in mind too, when these guys are freaked out, these aren't, weekend sailors like myself. Several of these guys, this is what they did for a living. They grew up on that. They knew when it was dangerous. And when it happens, they freak out. And they doubt. In fact, you notice they call him teacher, is they don't even realize that he's God. They don't ask him for help. They get on his case. How many know that happens when storms pop up? Sometimes the worst parts of us get revealed. Our demons pop out. Sometimes those things pop out to teach us lessons. Oh, I didn't know that was still sitting in there. Now check what happens in these things, and when this stuff happens, when you freak out, and I'll say this. Think about this time. Every person in here has had that experience, had that phone call, had that interaction, had something happen where it just, life hits you. You weren't expecting it. For over Memorial Day, my sister-in-law Dana and Ben got married, and so we had family over at our house. So at any given time, there was 12 to 20 of us there. And 12 sleeping there. And we went to bed that Sunday, woke up Memorial morning, Memorial Day morning to my wife telling me, the downstairs is flooded. Like, what? You know, like, oh, she's flooded. She doesn't know what flooded means, you know. And I go down. Actually, I think it was one of the kids that came up, so it must have been bad. She didn't even come tell me, tell your father. So, of course, with no urgency, I get up, you know, and go down there. And then I go into the room where, like, the water heater is, and, oh, it's flooded. So at some point during the night, out of the convenience of life, while it's a holiday and I have all these people over at my house, my water heater decided to tap out, to rust out, and to leak. But, of course, as water heaters do, when they run out of water, what does it do? Fills with more water. So literally just water pouring in my basement. So it had gone out of the utility room. We have a finished basement. It had gone into the finish area, into the living room area, into the bedroom area. My brother-in-law told me when he woke up, he stepped on the carpet, the first thing he thought is, man, one of the kids peed on the floor. You know, he's got small kids, so he's saying, which one of these kids did this, you know? And then he keeps going. He's like, I don't think anyone has that much liquid in them to make all of this wet. So I had to shut it off, and, you know, of course, you call the emergency line of the plumber. It's Memorial Day, so no one's there. You know, we can get to you in a few days. So then we had no water in my house for a few days. Now, when it first happens, right, it's this shocking you know, the first thing your brain does is tries to rationalize it, tries to figure it out, tries to find a way out. How do we make this happen? And when you can't, you just realize you're stuck with it. It's tough, and it's easy just to get, Rawr! This is what happens to these guys. This boat's about to capsize, and they see Jesus back there taking a nap. What the heck? Come on, teacher, do you care? You want to help? We're filling with water. Little help here. We're going to die. Sometimes when storms pop in your life, it can cause you to doubt. It can cause you to doubt God. It can cause you to doubt that He's really there. Because our thought is, if God is with us, I will never have any problems. But that is not biblical. And these guys literally have God with them. And the storm pops up. So what does Jesus do? Well, He's going to use this storm to teach them about God and to teach them about themselves. Now, it's one thing to learn about God and learn about yourself when you're here in church. You're hearing about God, hearing and learning about yourself. It's another thing to learn about God and to learn about yourself when you're in a storm. It's a lesson that can't be taught in any other way, right? That's the reason why it's difficult to take marriage advice from someone who's been married 18 months. Right? You got some young kid come up here and start teaching you about marriage and how to love your wife and how to love your husband. And you're sitting there thinking, give me a break. And get it like at least a decade in and come talk to me, okay? Like experience some life. Because you know there's only lessons you can learn in marriage if you go through them. Same thing. You know, if you have kids, maybe you got 6. We got 4. It's like we're just amateurs. You start getting some kids. You don't want someone who's just has a little 1-month-old come and start giving you parenting advice. Oh, we'll never, it's just like, no. There's something that we know forms us when we experience things. Right? And have you ever been on the job site and had the new guy telling you how to do it? Goodness gracious, right? That can be a little difficult. This is what they're about to learn. They're about to learn some lessons that they could only learn being in that storm, which is why that weird concept of somehow I'm supposed to be excited about this. Because I'm going to learn something I wouldn't have. So what does Jesus do? First, He teaches them about who God is. It says, verse 39, that He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. As I said, no waves. No waves. Stop. Good waves. Okay. And when He says that, it says that the wind died down and it was completely calm. Could you imagine going from intense, we were about to die, it's taking this ship down, yelling at him, what's wrong? You're sitting back there sleeping. And he gets up and he looks around and he goes, stop it. And everything stops. And you're sitting there in perfect calm water. Which is why later on it says they were terrified. What in the world? See, the thing is, you will learn about God in some of your storms. When you trust in him, he shows up in crazy, awesome ways you never thought he could. But you know what? For him to show up like that, it requires a storm. And when that happens, and it might just be a small storm, he shows up in a small way, in different ways. Maybe he shows up and takes a complete miracle, takes the whole thing away, like in here, just calms the entire storm in your life. Maybe it's he gives you the strength to get through it. But when he shows up and you get through that, your faith gets what? Stronger. So now you can believe him. You know, he took us through this. There's no problem. I remember, I told you before about the story, but some of you remember kind of my big conversion moment, which was a car accident I got into. Lost control of a car, hit a tree going 60 miles per hour. Don't do that, by the way. And I walked away, like, virtually unscathed. I remember a couple years later going in a plane with my grandma to visit some family in Puerto Rico, and turbulence started happening and started going crazy. And I started freaking out. And I remember it was immediately like, I don't think God saved me from a car just to kill me in a plane. Maybe he did. I don't know. But it was kind of this calming of like, oh yeah, he's with me. Somehow I got through that car accident, which was a miracle. But this was an older car, didn't even have airbags. So the thing that stopped my head going through the windshield was the steering wheel. It was broken off. I had a little bit of a bruise through here. But other than that, it was kind of amazing. When you're in those moments and you're going through the tough stuff, you'll see God can show up and show you how he is God. These guys learned about themselves. He said to the disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Now, see, their concern about drowning was reasonable and normal. When storms happen, it is okay to freak out. Okay. I'm a real man of faith. I wouldn't freak out. Well, it's still scary. I mean, think about it. If you never freaked out, if you never had it, why would you need God? So it's going to be scary. It's going to freak out. Life will throw that stuff at us. But see, their thing is they didn't quite understand who he was. Right? They called him teacher. He was just a great prophet guy like they've read about before or something like that. They didn't realize, oh, this is God. Had their faith allowed them to know that, they would have responded probably a little differently in there, huh? One, they probably wouldn't have rebuked him and yelled at him. Right? Imagine yell at someone goes, oh, by the way, that was God. Oh, my Lord. Another reason, they were terrified. What just happened? So when you're through those things and you're going through the tough things, you're going to find that you'll learn something about God and you'll learn about yourself. How much faith do I have? Where does it seem like I'm weak? Where do I need help? Sometimes you can learn things. You seek wisdom through that. And other people in your life can give you advice and things can pop alive in your brain. Like I said, my first time learning this was when I had that car accident. And I'm just sitting there and I was just shell-shocked. I'm just like sitting in my room the next day just like, so I had people with me. They could have died. One girl got hurt pretty badly. And just all that's just sitting. I can't even process it. And all that was said to me is, sometimes God can use things like this just to speak to us. And it was like as soon as that was said, something hit me. And I just had a desire to repent and to follow God. Just something tugging on me of like, I need to get serious about this. Holy cow. He's like, well, so Phil, you think that God caused your car to crash to do that? No, I don't. But I think he used that storm to teach me something, to show himself to me, to teach me something about myself. And the other thing is, the storms will stretch your faith. As it says in verse 41, they were terrified. And they asked each other, who is this, that even the wind and the waves obey him? Up to this point, they knew a little bit about him, but their faith was stretched when all of a sudden they saw, wait a second, he can yell at the waves. Who is this? Their faith is beginning to grow. They're beginning to understand who Jesus is a little bit more, understanding how he has this divinity, how he is God, and all this stuff popping up, which is a little scary. Especially when you're in the presence of him, and like I said, you just yelled at him. Probably like, hey, sorry about that, Jesus. I was a little stressed back there, But the thing is, everybody here is either headed into a storm, going through a storm, or you're just coming out of one. Right? That's life. We go through it. But if you're not sometimes willing to learn those lessons and allow that storm to help grow your faith, sometimes it keeps kicking you and beating you up in the same way over and over again. Sometimes those storms really do help us. Help us to grow, help us to grow stronger in faith, become more mature people. Right? Just like when you go into and you get into any kind of relationship, and the closer you get to them, the more you learn about them, the more you kind of learn what drives them crazy, what doesn't drive them crazy. Hopefully you're leaning towards the doesn't drive them crazy thing. But if you don't, and you keep doing the same thing, and you drive them crazy, and you drive them crazy, and you drive them crazy, what's going to happen at some point? There goes that relationship. Well, what could I do? Oh, don't drive them crazy all the time. Right? Are you willing to learn through the storm? So listen, I know that everyone goes through certain things. Storms will happen. Loved ones pass away. Jobs disappear. All of a sudden you're staring at bills and you have no way to pay them. Relationships fall apart. And it's tough. And it hurts. And it is okay to freak out. Some just read through the Psalms. There's times the psalmist is just freaking out. But it always comes back to, but yet, God, you're here in this. So reveal yourself to me. And if you understand that and you look for God in those things, you will find that you do not come out the same person from that storm as you went in. That you've grown, that your faith is stronger, that you've learned some invaluable things that you wouldn't have learned if you didn't go through those things. So, I pray for all of you that stormy seasons stay far away, but certainly when they do come in, I pray that you trust God, that you seek him, and if you feel like your faith is falling apart, this is what's awesome about church. We get to help each other. When you feel like you have no faith, you have no trust, you can lean into someone else. Allow their faith to keep you up. This is why we're supposed to do this together. Amen.